Hello, everyone. Hi. My apologies for being a few minutes late, only a few. We were just finishing up our second call on in the Plant Wisdom Book Club on the book The Underland. It was so good. It was actually hard for us to close up, but luckily Jill said some brilliant words, and it was just like, okay, we've said it now. We've got it set. So we're here. It's Friday. Yes. Love Friday. Love being here with you. Today we're going to take a bit of a technical term, because I think we've been going through some more, as you know, I have a broad range of papers that I look at and I think about, and I, think should I be doing commentary on these? And I'm trying to find the right mix that gives us a good foundation and a good base, as well as takes us into the current discussions. And you know that we started off with the idea of plant intelligence and plant neurobiology and the whole argument between our plants intelligent and our plants conscious and all these other aspects. As we're getting into these years now, we're kind of into the 2000s, 15, 16, 17s and beyond. The question of the intelligence, the standard intelligence of plants lessens as a question. Consciousness is still very much an argument in place, but it's an argument in place for so many species, not just plants. Like lots of different species of animals are going through the same kind of philosophical and biological debates about consciousness. So those are going to weave through. And then we have all the beautiful critical plant sciences that have been created, all the plant humanities discussions that have been happening as a result of many of these, new discoveries and understanding. But there are some fundamental, what's the right word, questions, fundamental areas of understanding that are still big old-fashioned question marks, like the effect of sound waves on plant growth. I mean, it's so basic in the sense of one of these debated topics, like, the typical, does playing music to plants change the way plants grow? Does, for example, talking to plants change the way plants grow? Now, science is going to keep breaking this down into the most technical definitions that they could find, because it's hard to put scientific rigor around just talking to plants change anything. Michelle and I were just having a conversation about this, about the fact of it's not just about talking at plants, it's about talking with plants, at least from our experience as plant communicators. And anybody who's like been a gardener who has had plants that they feel like grow better when you talk to them, like King Charles always talks about. It really isn't just about me putting words to the plant, like just saying things. It's about me feeling like I'm having a conversation with the plant, like the plant really can hear me. But there is a two-way conversation happening. And the question is, does it matter for the growth of the plant that the plant feels that? I just realized I went out of focus again. This camera is having a few moments where it's like, but it's a question of, is it important that the plant feels like the conversation is two-way, or that the plant really believes that that the plant is here, like that the human can hear, that the human believes that the plant can hear? Is that important? Like there's lots of considerations here that might change. It's not just, I discovered this when I was doing my research into the effects of plant music on human health. It's not as easy as just playing music for the plant, because there is this belief system of entanglement and the idea that your intention also changes it. So what the actual person administrating the test believes is happening could have an effect on the results. And this is another reason why the results have been very different and mixed. This blurriness of the camera is really starting to, like, the palm of my hand. Does anybody read palms? Now's your chance. Oh, sorry. Okay, let's see. Haha. No, didn't work completely. All right, it's fine. I don't know why it's, there we go. Now I got it, I think, a little bit better. All right, so today we're going to look at, I have prepared two papers. One of them is a little older, one of them is a little newer. I prepared 2 of them because I feel like a lot of it is going to be very technical in the middle. So we're probably going to jump through the actual technical jargon of like, I put a lamp or I put this kind of speaker in the speaker, because when you do a paper, the study has to be reproducible. And in order for it to be reproducible, that means that you have to put in a lot of details about exactly what instrumentation was used and exactly how things were created and all kinds of different stuff, because it's that instrumentation that allows for another person to pick up the paper and actually reproduce it. A lot of that stuff I'll skip because it's not important to what we're having a discussion about. But I prepped 2 just in case based on the time. We'll see how it goes. But these are 2 papers. One of them is, I believe, from 2010. So a little bit older, but again, these are those fundamental questions around, do plants hear, or more importantly, does singing to a plant or does playing music to a plant actually change the growth? And then later on, we can get into the reasons of why. I've got lots of thoughts on that, especially after working with the music of the plants for so many years. But for now, let's just go through some of these foundations. This is the other reason I do this is because I hear from many people that they're afraid to get into discussions with people about plant intelligence because they feel like they don't have the vocabulary in order to bring up argumentation. Sometimes it's just a gut feeling and you feel like, oh, well, I can't really have a discussion with somebody else about a gut feeling. So my goal of going through these papers is that, one, you can always reference these videos, but also you could pick up words, terminology, understandings, the way some of these arguments are being presented to others, so that if you get into discussions with somebody, you don't feel like you're just always going from your, well, I talked to the plant and the plant told me that, which is great. Trust me, within NCC, that's a totally viable argument. You can happily just say, because spider plant told me so. But if you're talking to somebody else, they might be like, what does that mean? So we're going to get into this idea of some of these fundamental pieces that might be useful for you in other kinds of discussions. Plus, it helps give us a better base. I have to admit, not all of these papers always give us a result that we expect or we think is correct. And that's also a valid discussion piece too. So let me just share my screen so that, we're actually talking all about the same thing. Okay, here we go. So the first paper that I have prepped up here is called The Influence of Sound Wave Stimulation on the Growth of Strawberry in Sunlight Greenhouse. As you can tell by the names and the fact that this is from the China Agricultural University, this means that some of our syntax and grammar might be a bit unusual, but that's part of the fun. I find this really interesting that this paper comes from the College of Water Conservancy and Civil Engineering, and then the China Agricultural University. Just interesting. I find that interesting. Okay, so the abstract of this paper, which we know that's where we always want to start. In this paper, we adopt the QGWA03. See why I said that I prepped 2, because some of these might be really technical in the middle. Plant audio apparatus to investigate the sound effects on strawberry in the leaf area, the photosynthetic characteristics, and other physiological indexes. Remember, just as a kind of, let me share a little bit how I work with a lot of these papers. It is going to take some time before we have papers that will be able to test in a way that makes sense to the academic community some of the more non-physical characteristics. This is because, not just because there might be spiritual connotations to them or whatever, but only because plant cognition, remember, is still an emerging field. And so there are very few scientists that are really able to take these types of experiments and adapt them into a cognitive understanding. We still don't know how the plant mind works. We don't know what plants are thinking. We don't understand yet all of these different pieces. And there is still a lot of debate as to whether or not plants think at all. So many of these papers, especially if they're a little older than 2015, 2016, are going to be very, very biological in nature. But that's not a problem. we, as the cutting edge of plant advocacy and of plant friendship and allies, can extrapolate and can take these to a better understanding, or a deeper or broader understanding. My suggestion, and this is what I personally do, is I read a lot of these papers with the idea of understanding some of the physiological and the physiological apparatus or mechanism that's happening as much as I can understand, because remember, I am not a trained biologist, right? This is something I've been studying for a long time, but not necessarily always like have all the exact details of plant botany, of plant physiology. But what I personally do is go to understand the best as possible what's being taken out there. And personally, I then take it to my plant ally friends, right? So whether I'm going to feel it in my body with no-name Dracaena over here, whether I'm going to have a conversation with a spider plant now lives over here, used to live up there, but now lives over here. Whether I'm going to have a conversation with spider plant, whether I'm going to be called by any other of the plants like Gary the Silver Fir outside, any of the plants that I work with regularly, that I understand the way that they think and that we have a rapport going, I will oftentimes take some of these papers to them and ask him to help me better understand them. This is my process. All of you are going to find your own process of how you think you're going to be able to get this done. But that's what really works for me. I take the physiological, the biological as much as possible. And then from there, I build on top of it with the help of my plant allies and partners, because who better understands their own physiology than, kin themselves. Anyway, so this is really working on, again, the effects of sound, how sound affects this strawberry plant. It was found that there were no significant differences between the circumstances of two sunlit greenhouses. The strawberry after the sound wave stimulation grew stronger than in the control, and its leaf were deeper green and shifted to an earlier time, about 1 week, to blossom and bear fruit. It was also found that the resistance of strawberry against disease and insect pests were enhanced. The experiment's results show that sound wave stimulation can certainly promote the growth of plants. This is important, especially the latter part of that, where they talk about the resistance of strawberry against disease and pests were enhanced. When I first started to work with the music of the plants, one of the things that I discovered was that there were several people working with and using the music of the plants as a form of pesticide. Even Sting at the time had a vineyard in Tuscany that would play, because Sting had a music of the plants device, was actually playing music to the vineyard in order. So one of the plants was making music for the other plants as a form of pest control. There's also now a company called Genotics, which is a French company, that what they do is they work with organic producers. So mainly, I don't want to say it's mainly agriculture, but they do work with a lot of people that work in agriculture who are organic producers who might have a pest infestation. So they work with plants that they cannot, for their organic certification, use any kind of pesticides, any kind of chemical pesticides. And so what this company does is identifies the pest, takes and creates from what would be the equivalent of the insecticide used, creates music through the combination of amino acids and turning those into notes of music, and uses that music that is genetic, that has been created from the genetic material of what would be the antithesis, or how you would help these plants in a insecticide kind of format, but they create music that then allows them to work with this auditory pesticide, you can say. And they've been very, very successful. So this kind of paper caught my eye because of exactly that piece. Because one thing is the fact that the plant grows stronger and faster and all kinds of different things, which there is a belief system that I have. I don't know when we get into this, but there's been in other papers that I've read this belief system that it's because there's a vibration that's happening. And so the plants are more excited, in the sense of not excited as in woohoo, but excited as in like stimulated. And that's the reason why they grow. But this second part doesn't fit into that, right? The fact that there's more resistance against disease and insects, this is something that's huge. The idea that sound could be, and that Extrapolating, remember, my mind then goes and tries to put these pieces into places, would make sense as to why, if I talk to my plants, if I have conversations with my plants grow healthier at home and are in need of less pesticides or any kind of, are more resilient and such. So that all matches up in a lot of ways. But let's get into this a little deeper. Introduction. Plants are stimulated inevitably by a variety of, oh, by the way, when you read these papers, don't get too excited about the introduction, because even though they might draw the same conclusion you draw, doesn't necessarily mean they will reach there through the same logic, and they will break that conclusion by trying to give it some biological factor that sort of tries to take the awe away of how amazing plants are. Not saying that's what's going to happen, but just it's always good to be prepared, just in case. Just know that they have to do this. It's called scientific rigor. They have to do it. It's okay. So plants are stimulated inevitably by a variety of external environmental factors in the growth process. And these stimulations have different extent influence to plants' growth, and then influence the crop's output and quality. As a flexible mechanical wave, the sound wave is a form of alternative stress. Remember, I told you, they're stressed, they're excited. And also a universal source of external stimulation to plants. Studies have shown that a certain frequency or sound intensity of the sound wave stimulation can promote the growth of plants. Scholars have done a lot of research on the role and mechanism of sound waves on plants. The approaches are mainly in the form of music, sound, and pure tone, single frequency sine waves. In music processing, music sound, natural sounds, had significantly improved the number of seeds sprouted compared to untreated control. And there were no significant differences between harsh noise group and the untreated group. Under both light and dark conditions, sound upregulated expression of the RBCS and ALD by using classical music and single frequency vibration signal. In pure tone processing, so obviously music has lots of different types of sounds. There is a theory as to why certain types of music is better than other types of music. I have an alternative theory, and when we get into it, when we get closer to it, I will share it. But here's where I think this is based on my conversation with plants, my thought process only, non-scientific in any single way. I think that a lot of this is about intention of the person applying the test, but that's my opinion, and I'll get into it in a minute. In pure tone processing, the hypocotyls, elongation, and gene expression of Arabidopsis thaliana, Arabidopsis, our favorite scientific plant. Did I ever tell you the story? I don't know if I ever told you the story. So back when I was studying in my master's, we were in one of the few times that we actually got to go to the LIN, which is the Laboratorio Internazionale di Neurobiologia Vegetale, so the International Laboratory of Plant Neurobiology. This is Stefano Mancuso's laboratory with where all the studies get taken and carried out and whatever. And I was having a conversation with one of the scientists there, and I asked the question that they looked at me and nobody, of course, had ever contemplated, because you know how I am. So Arabidopsis thaliana, which is a type of watercress, is the #1 used plant in experimentation inside of laboratories. Laboratories around the world that do plants studies will almost always start with Arabidopsis. It's like the star of the show. My question was, given that Arabidopsis seeds all are generation after generation of these lab plants, and you could apply this exact same argument to lab rats, by the way, is it possible that Arabidopsis has forgotten how to be a plant? In the sense that, is it possible that Arabidopsis has been in the laboratory and grown under laboratory conditions for so long that this poor plant has forgotten what it means to be a wild plant, and to a certain extent doesn't operate like a wild plant would? I mean, if we humans can be conditioned, can't plants be conditioned too? Just a thought process. Play with it. Think about it. Comment on it. Let me know what your thoughts are. But I'm starting to think that you need to take all those seeds of Arabidopsis and just set them free in the world, and then maybe collect some wild seeds and start with there, because I have a feeling that some of our experiments would be very different if we allowed ourselves to, work with real wild plants rather than lab rats. And I think the same thing is the same with mice, but I do think that like mice and rats, I don't know, are we overbreeding them and they're just labs? And anyways, this is where my thinking goes. You guys already get a little bit, you all get too much insight into the way my mind works. My mind works strangely. Okay. In pure tone processing, the hypocotyled's elongation and gene expression of Arabidopsis thailandia seeds were both improved by sound stimulus of about 50 hertz and 90 dB. 90 dB is kind of the volume. Chinese Academy of Sciences, Department of Applied Chemistry of China Agriculture University, and Department of Engineering Mechanics of blah, 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 jointly find that a range of sounds can stimulate tobacco's synchronization of cell division and promote DNA synthesis in the S stage of cell division. This was another paper I actually have on my list. So basically what they're saying is by synchronizing the cell division and promote the DNA synthesis is really another form of growth, right? And then improves plants' growth and development. Sound wave stimulation can significantly enhance or inhibit the ATP content of Actinidia chinensis callus, which I'm assuming is another plant. Moderate sound stimulation can increase the activity of ATP synthesis and is conducive to the level of energy metabolism of plants. Basically, they're telling us all the other studies that exist that have talked about this. By using the QGWA03 plant audio apparatus, tomatoes' yields increased by 13.2% and its disease of gray mold decreased by 9%. Explain to me why we're using chemical fertilizers when we know this. Explain that to me. I do not understand. I do not understand. At present, the sound wave stimulation studies on the impact of plants are increasing, but the sound effect and mechanism are still controversial. To this end, QGWA03 plant audio apparatus, or now called PAA for short, was used to stimulate the strawberry growing in the sunlight greenhouse. And the sound effects of leaf area, photosynthetic characteristics, rate, and other physiological indexes were researched. This paper is our preliminary study of sound stimulation mechanism. So here are the general materials. I'm going to breeze through some of these, by the way, because again, these are all very detailed because people need to be able to reproduce this. So this is a sunlight greenhouse, right? No, this is the time period, November to January, where exactly it is. They selected 60 healthy strawberry seedlings, which grew in the same conditions, and transplanted them into white plastic flower pots with medium loam. Then put the flower pots into 2 sunlight greenhouses, respectively, 30 pots each, which were 80 meters apart. In the 2 greenhouses, conditions of structure, environment, irrigation control, and relative position of flower pots were basically the same between each other. We carried the simulation experiment. The PAA was put in the middle of the pots in one building, and the other one was used as a control. So here's our testing. Now, the sound wave treatment began when the strawberry seedlings were transplanted into greenhouses, and once every 2 days to play and 9, I'm assuming, okay, hold on. Sound wave treatment were in the transplanted into the greenhouses. So it began after the plants were separated into the 2 greenhouses. Once every 2 days, they played at, I'm assuming it's mean by 9. In that case, they're saying at 9 o'clock in the morning, maybe to start with 3 hours each. Remember, this is a Chinese university, English grammar sometimes. The frequency and volume, which is fine. I mean, it's amazing that it's this way. The frequency and volume were determined by the temperature and humidity of the greenhouse. We measured the leaf area and photosynthetic indicators of the strawberry at the beginning of the growing season, squaring period, flowering period, and fruiting stage. The production and disease resistance of strawberry were also determined in the fruiting stage. Here are the determinations. We used LI 3000 portable leaf area meter. So this is what they used to capture what was the data. So the most important part, the results. By the way, when I did my research into the effects of human health, I had done actually a research study before this, which was a little bit more complex. And it was very that's not true. It was somewhat scientific, but it wasn't really rigorous because I didn't know any better. It was my first attempt. I took and I created this in this case was the effect of training a plant on human music and the effects of how it would change the music that was actually being created. I don't know if I've ever told you about this, but this was a fascinating study because it was my first kind of real attempt at this. What I did was I took 4 plants. I had a control. So a control that was no listening to any kind of music at all. Actually, 2 controls. No listening to any kind of music at all. I remember now. One that was able to listen to, one that was able to listen to the plant music that they made. So they listened to music for, I'm being very bad about respecting this. I was trying to remember them now. Okay, 4 plants, 2 control, 2 that listened to a soundtrack that I had of music that I played for them every day. And the soundtrack, I think, lasted an hour or something like that. So 2 that listened to human music, my choice of like a wide range of different styles of music, and then 2 that didn't listen to any music at all. Then they played and they made their own music, and I recorded all of the music that they made. One control would make music, but could hear themselves as they made music. And the other control would make music, using the music of the plants in this case, but would not be able to hear the music that they were making. And the same thing with the version with the plant that was trained. So 4 plants, each one, 2 that trained, 2 not trained, 2 that listen to their music as they make music and the music of the plants, and 2 that don't. I sent all these recordings, which was, I think I recorded once a week or something like that for 7 weeks. I sent all these recordings to a set of musicologists to listen to the music and to tell me what they found. Was it complex? I had a questionnaire that I created. Was it complex? Were they able to discover any kinds of trends in the plants? Was the music different, between all these? They knew nothing about what they were listening to, but it was, and what I found was really interesting. I found, I have to go back through the data, but we found that there were some areas where the plants that had been trained made more complex music, in the sense that the music had the melody had a more complexity to it, where there was more use of the range of sound and of notes and of things like that. The most fascinating, I'm not going to go through the whole study, but the most fascinating discovery was when the musicologist told me that by the way, I sent them all the tracks random. They didn't know who made what. They just had tracks that they had to analyze. And I received feedback back that said, this track was very melancholic, very sad sounding. Like it had a whole series. They told me about the scale that was being used and everything like that. And this happened maybe twice. So I went back and I looked at the plants and I was trying to understand what was going on. This music was made by a plant that was dying at the time. Because, don't ask me how, there was a whole story, but basically one of the plants in the experiment started to die and was going through their death process and promptly died right at the end of the study. And that music was made by that plant. Gave me goosebumps to think that the plant kind of could share their process. And I wouldn't say that it was like sad, but it was like they kept describing it. It was like melancholic. It was more in the minor keys. It was obvious what was happening. It was very, very, very interesting. Like you could feel the disease, not so much the sadness, but I think the disease, you could feel the disease through the music itself. That was kind of what was coming out. And again, these musicologists didn't know what was going on. So I don't know why I took you on that rabbit hole, but hopefully the rabbit hole was interesting. I should redo that experiment, because that's an experiment I could redo. What do you think, folks? Could we redo something like, I'm looking around all the plants to see if there's anybody who's like, I'll do that with you. We'll see. Okay, sound effects to the leaf area of strawberry. Figure 2 shows at the beginning of the growing season, squaring period, and fruit staging, the leaf area and the treatment are significantly greater than the control, but there is no significant difference in the flowering period. So that's interesting. You can see here the difference between them. Figure 3 shows that during the 4 stages, there's no significant difference of the intercellular CO2 concentration between the two groups, but the transpiration rate, okay, hold on, I'm getting down there. And as always, when I publish this, I'll give you access to where I got this from. And conductance to H2O are significantly greater than control. Only in the fruiting stage, the photosynthetic rate has significant difference. Sound effect to the yield and disease resistance of strawberry. We surveyed the yield and disease situation in January 18, 2008, shows that the table shows that the disease rate in the treatment is significantly less than the control, but there is little effect on the yield. So here's the stimulation, the yield per plant, and then the disease rate. That's a significant disease rate. 50% in one and 16% in the other. That's significant because that's like what happens after. Interesting. It is found that sound stimulation has a great effect on the physiology of strawberry, and it has different impact in the different physiological stages. Viewing the entire growing period, sound waves do promote the leaf area of strawberry, but the effects of the photo and CI are not obvious. The trend of sound influence on cond and terminal are both firstly increasing and then decreasing. It indicates that the terminal of the strawberry leaf is mainly affected by the stomata factors. Terminal decreases in the latter growth stages. It shows that sound has little effect on the growth of strawberry after the flowering period and also explains the reasons of production after significant changes. Shows that the sound has little effect on the growth after the flowering period. This means that according to their research, from the time that the plant starts to sprout to the time that the plant actually flowers, this is the greatest range of results from the sound. It also explains the reason of production without significant changes. In addition, the experiment was not started in the breeding period, so maybe another reason for the unimproving production. During the initial growth period, the improvement of terminal promotes the transpiration of water and mineral elements, so it increases the disease resistance. I find this really interesting that they did mention the fact that during the sprouting period, the breeding period, the beginning, the plants didn't participate, and would this have made a difference? I have a feeling it would have. In this paper, because of course that's when the overall structure of the plant is coming in. In this paper, the experimental results show that sound waves not only can promote the growth of strawberry, can also increase the disease resistance. About the mechanism of sound waves improving the growth of plants, there are 3 possible reasons. Environmental stress, including the sound wave stimulation, changes to fluidity. I told you that they would try to explain this as saying that it's just because they're excited, like excited bull. Not, you got what I'm saying. Changes to fluidity and permeability of membrane. The signaling molecule delivers the stress signaling to other signaling molecules. The spread of stress signaling causes related gene expression. But we believe that there is a phenomenon of spontaneous sound in plants. When the frequency between the external vibration and plant spontaneous sounds are consistent, the resonance will occur, thus promoting plant growth. We did a pretest by using the something laser Doppler vibrometer to measure the sound frequency of alocasia and found that in normal growth conditions, plant spontaneous sound frequency was low frequency range of 400 to 200 hertz. Okay, so this is interesting because, let me finish the sentence and then I'll tell you. At the same time, we used low frequency sound waves to simulate more than 50 fine crops and achieved remarkable effects. So if you, I don't know if you remember this paper, but there was a paper that made a lot of headlines. It's the paper, I think, that Monica Galliano was on, also Stefano Mancuso, which was the idea that plants they hear water running, and that's where they grow towards. Hopefully you remember that paper. This made all the sensation. It's the idea that plants can hear water and that's what they grow towards. And there was various different types of experimentation as well as experiential information that was kind of used in this. And this was Galliano in her early days and Mancuso back when they actually kind of worked together. Not anymore. Anyway, they went on to say that the reason why the plants were attracted to the sound of running water was because the plants were actually connected to this specific range, sound range. This took them through what was special about that sound range, which was, I think, about 200 hertz is what they were studying. And then there's an entire acoustic sound of plants to the fact that plants create sounds. So in other words, plants make sounds, a kind of clicking and a popping noise and a whole series of things. It sounds like, what they're saying is that plants make a specific kind of sound, and that if you share with them that sound, in other words, if you have external to them what is the same sound, there's a resonance that gets created between this. It's almost like a mirroring effect. The plant recognizes their own sound, which could be argued, this is my argument only, could be argued that this is the sound of like a healthy plant, right? When they make these sounds, it's because the plant is healthy. And then it's almost like by playing an external sound that is of the same frequency, you're sort of mirroring this healthiness to the plant. And this has achieved remarkable effects. This is fascinating and interesting to see, because I think as you start to go into why are the plants, and you start to think about it from what we know today of human healing, whether it's by sound healing or by other forms of energetic healing, a lot of it is about resonance and vibration, right? When that resonance and that vibration is in tuned. And so I find this as an interesting understanding that I think we can, again, this is the type of thing that I would read, and I would read maybe a few papers to see whether or not like my non-scientific but more vibrational interpretation makes sense. And then I would take it to the plants to better understand like, hey, I'm thinking that this is what's going on, walk me through it type of thing. To sum up, we believe that the mechanism of sound effect to plants can be explained in two ways. From the biological point of view, sound may affect the characteristics and functions of plant cell membrane and gene expression. But from the physics point of view, the frequencies of sound vibration and plant spontaneous sound are in line, and then the resonance occurs. This experiment is only the initial discussion on the mechanism of sound stimulation to plants and is the foundation for exploring the mechanism from the perspective of plants' vibration characteristics. Mind you, this is 2010. Before Galliano got into the entire world of plant cognition, her focus was plant acoustics. Where she wanted to go after her initial kind of experiments around the intelligence of plants was really going down the idea of what is the acoustical world of plants. I think she ended up, I haven't seen exactly what she's working on today, and I haven't seen who's picked up that, but I do know that plant phytoacoustics is a direction that is interesting for lots of different reasons, that this type of experiment, this type of paper helps us better understand what that means and what that looks like. So this is the influence of sound wave stimulation on the growth of strawberry and sunlit greenhouses. And this is obviously proving the idea that sound waves, or the idea of sound in general, helps plants grow. Now, in this particular paper, as we saw, it's from the phase of, from the period where the plant is kind of stable enough, so not the initial growth or sprouting period or breeding period, as they call it, to then the flowering period. From the flowering period on, then they found no change. So let's see what let's see if we can get through this other one quickly and see where we go. This is a paper that came out in 2011 instead. Again, from the same, I didn't even notice that. It's from the same university. So this should be a continuation, because this is 2014. That other one was 2010 when it gets published, 2008 when the actual experiments happen. So let's get into this abstract and see where it takes us. Sound wave tech. So as we said, this is the advances in effects of sound waves on plants. So this is the next generation of the paper that we already saw. Sound wave technology has been applied to different plants. It has been found that sound waves were at different frequencies, sound pressure levels, exposure periods, and distances from the source and sound influence plant growth. Experiments have been conducted in the open field and under greenhouse growing conditions with different levels of audible sound frequencies and sound pressure levels. Sound waves at the 1 kilohertz and 100 dB for 1 hour within a distance of 0.2 meters could significantly promote the division of cell wall fluidity in callus cells and also significantly enhance the activity of protective enzymes and endogen hormones. Sound wave stimulation could increase the plant plasma membrane, HATPase, activity and contents of soluble sugars, soluble protein, and amylase activity of callus. Moreover, sound waves could increase the content of RNA, and the level of transcription. Stress-induced genes could switch on under sound stimulation. Sound waves of 0.1 to 1 kilohertz and SPL of 70 plus or minus 5 dB for 3 hours from plant acoustic frequency technology, that's that PAFT generator, within a distance ranged from 30 to 60 meters every other day, significantly increased the yield of sweet pepper, cucumber, and tomato by 30.05, 37.1, and 13.2% respectively. Furthermore, the yield of lettuce, spinach, cotton, rice, and wheat were increased by big numbers. Sound waves may also strengthen plant immune system. It has been proved that spider mite, aphids, gray molds, late blight, and virus disease of tomatoes in the greenhouses decreased by all these different numbers respectively, and the sheath blight of rice was reduced by 50%. This paper provides an overview of literature for the effects of sound waves on various growth parameters of plant at different growth stages. Let me state one thing that they don't state here, but that as a person who is a sound engineer, like a music engineer, it's my degree. 1 kilohertz is about the sound of your speech. I mean, it's about the range in which you speak. Around 1 kilohertz is the sound of a voice. So when somebody asks you, do you talk to your plants? Your answer should be yes. And if they say, hogwash, that doesn't work, you say, but yes, it does. And here's why. Because this is a paper that not only proves that plants react to sound in their own way, and by increasing not just yield and other growth, but also by helping them shore up their immune system, right? Making them stronger, more resilient. But also, this shows that talking to plants makes sense scientifically. Ta-da! Ta-da! All right, let's see what else we get in here. Oops, sorry. Okay, introduction. Sound is acoustic energy in the form of an oscillatory concussive pressure wave transmitted through gases, liquids, and solids. The lowest frequency classification in the acoustic spectrum is infrasound, and that has a frequency range of less than about 20 hertz. Infrasound has been applied in infrasound diagnosis and therapeutic infrasound. Ultrasound is defined as acoustic wave at frequencies greater than 20 kilohertz. More or less, by the way, our hearing is around the 20 to 20K. So 20 to 20,000 hertz is about what we listen to. 20, to be honest, is really rare that you can get that low. 60, you know that, have you ever heard like a buzz? Like sometimes from electricity or whatever you hear, that buzz, I can't do it, but there's like, I don't know about you, but I can always hear it. I can always hear when the TV is on, even if it's been like, you can't, there has no picture, but I just know it. I have very sensitive ears in these types of things, hence the music engineering. But that buzz is about 60 hertz, and that's like that ground hum, as we call it, like that you hear. 20K is also on the high range. If you've never had if you've never gone to loud concerts before, then you might be able to reach about 20K. But if you've gone to any kind of loud concerts before, spent a lot of time in loud noises, then you've probably damaged your hearing to a certain extent. But that's what it is. Okay. So ultrasound has been obviously widely used as medical practice for the last 50 years as both diagnostic and therapeutic tools. Ultrasound and infrasound can interact with biological tissues by thermal and mechanical processes. Audible sound is what human beings hear and has an approximate frequency range between 20 hertz and 20K. Didn't I just say that? Physiological effects of the environmental factors such as moisture, light, wind, temperature on plant stimulus and growth has been well understood. However, little information is available on the effects of audible sound on plants. Audible sound wave technology has recently been applied to plants as various physiological growth stages, e.g. seed, germination, callus growth, and endogenous hormone, mechanism of photosynthesis, and transcription of certain genes. Yeah. The sound stimulation could enhance disease resistance and decrease requirements for chemical fertilizers and biocides. Plants can produce sound waves at relatively low frequencies of 50 to 120 hertz spontaneously. This is that study that I was talking about, that they do this kind of sounds that we hear in that range. Well, that we kind of can hear in that range. Moreover, plants might have a meridian system, as in humans and other animals, namely internal frequency. Well, that's a new one. Plants might have a meridian system, as in humans and other animals, namely internal frequency. Plants can also absorb and resonate to specific external sound frequencies. Sound waves can change the cell cycle. Sound waves vibrate the plant leaves and speed up the photoplasmic movement in the cells. It has been reported that acoustic biology has become increasingly popular, and more attention has been paid to the effects of environmental stresses on the growth and development of plants. Yes, hence why poor plants that live in very, very loud environments, very, very scary. That's why they're all like, However, there is a lot of confusion and contradiction in this area. Some researchers broadcast different styles of music for plants, such as rock and roll, jazz, classical, or light music, and extracted different results. Whereas, okay, this styles of music, no test that I have seen takes into consideration what the person administering the test believes about the style of music. Many years ago, when I used to live in the Sacred Woods Village in Damanhur, I was a part of a group that's something called the planchette. Anyways, it's a mechanism that we have to communicate with nature spirits and beings of nature and such, especially in the Sacred Woods Temple. And we were told very clearly that at that time, I wasn't even really working with plants at that time. This was many years ago. I was told quite clearly that the style of music had to match the person administering it. So in other words, if any of you loved like heavy metal, which I actually do, loved heavy metal, if you loved heavy metal and you played heavy metal to your plants, then there's a different frequency that gets adapted. And so therefore the plants pick it up in a different way than if you hate heavy metal and you play it for the plants. Most of the time, classical music, most people are indifferent about, which is why when you do classical music tests, the results are kind of like whatever, because most people don't have a, I hate it. But heavy metal, people can say, I hate it. That's just my opinion again. My spiritual opinion, not necessarily something in this test, in this particular paper, just stating. Whereas some of the researchers are using different sound frequencies and sound pressure levels to treat plants. On the other hand, the mechanism of sound effects have not been revealed so far. It has also been indicated that some stress-induced genes might be switched on under sound stimulation and the level of transcription increased. Sound frequency technology stimulates leaf stomata to open. Thereby, the plant will be able to increase its uptake of spray, fertilizer, and dew. Sound waves were found to be efficient at getting the herbicide into the plant. Mature weeds can be sprayed with 50% less herbicide and biocide if also treated with sound waves. Therefore, mature weeds, wild plants. Therefore, sound waves can decrease the requirements for chemical fertilizer and pesticides. Furthermore, the sound and light might interact. Both sound energy and light energy could convert and store as chemical energy, which enhances the photosynthesis system. However, further experiments addressing these issues must be performed to confirm the results. This paper reviews the effects of sound waves on plants. Plant reviewed include medicinal plants, vegetables, and field crops at different growth stages. All right, pretty interesting so far. The effects of sound wave on seed germination. Sound waves have been applied to okra and zucchini seed by using natural sounds of birds and echoes. It was observed that natural sounds had a higher statistical significant effect on number of sprouted okra and zucchini seeds from the main condition and overexposure time. Redo wheat seeds and seedlings exposed to different signal frequencies. The treatment at a sound frequency of 5 kilohertz and sound pressure of SPL of 92 decibels stimulated tiller growth coupled with an increase in plant dry weight and number of roots. In contrast, Wang et al. Investigated the biological effect of sound waves on paddy rice seeds. Results revealed that the germination index, height of stem, relative increase of rate of fresh weight, activity of root system, and penetrability of cell membrane were significantly increased at sound frequencies of 0.4 kilohertz, 0.4 kilohertz, so 400 hertz, basically, and SPL of 106 decibels. When the sound wave stimulation exceeded 4 kilohertz, or 111 decibels, it inhibits the growth of paddy rice seeds, which would make sense because that's almost like screeching for them, like, eh! It's way outside of the realm of like our speech levels. Therefore, sound waves could greatly change the cell cycle of paddy rice cells and speed up its reproduction rate. Sound wave also transfers energy into the cell and drives the cytoplasmic streaming. Sound waves may affect the membrane materials to change the biological function of membrane and enhance cell metabolism. Cell membrane is very sensitive to environmental stimulation, and its penetrability influences the plant's resistance against harmful materials in poor environments. Recent evidence illustrated in the young root tips of zea mays were clearly bending towards a continuous sound source, and the high bending percentage was measured between 0.2 and 0.3 kilohertz. Galliano et al. Remember, I just told you, this is Galliano's experiment, right? The whole idea of the bending towards this particular sound, which was 200 hertz, what I just said, between 200 and 300 hertz, which is her opinion. I'm not in agreement with this last piece of the analysis, that's the reason why plants were growing towards water, that water flowing was giving off a sound of about 200 hertz. I'm not in agreement with this, and the last time I was in the lab, which was now several years ago, they weren't able to reproduce that particular piece of it. But there is an understanding that plants are growing towards some level of certain sounds. So this was, I was watching them do a reproduction study on some of this, and the way that they were doing it wasn't working, but this part was very reproducible. So water and the sound of voice. These are two elements, like in the range of human speech. Let me say it this way. These are two elements that we know scientifically plants tend to respond to. And yes, like Jill says, messages to water, to, like exactly, to the sound of light. I think it's a message that says that plants like water and humans to a certain extent when we're not being jerks, which, doesn't always happen. Okay. Sound wave stimulation has been applied to certain kinds of medicinal plants in tissue culture, especially on the growth of callus and the last decade in China, and is shown in table 1. So hold on a second, because I'm not going to go through all of this because, like I said, because we're at the end, but because it's just, this is the technical pieces, which we already know. And you can, of course, read this. This is going through each and every single type of plant as to exactly what's happening and how it worked. And you can always read this. So I'm not going to go into it. This is on vegetables. These are in the individual plants. This is the effects of plant acoustics, frequency technology on field crops. This is what I was talking about. This is what Genetics, that company that I was telling you about that does, they create a pesticide out of music. They create a music pesticide or an auditory pesticide. This is how they do it. they create it and then they play it for the plants in this similar way, and with really great results. I was just reading about some new like testimonials that they have that just came out. Okay, so this is all the effects on all these different plants. When you can look at this, you can read it. I want to get to the, okay, here we go. Challenges for acoustic frequency technology application. There are a number of challenges that are facing this technology. First, PAFT causes noise pollution for both animals and human communities, especially laborers on the open field farms and greenhouses. Really? Really? We're talking about noise pollution for a few hours a day when, have you ever been in a city? That's noise pollution. This is not noise pollution. That's noise pollution. Therefore, to manage this problem, sound wave applications should be short early in the morning and in huge farms of more than 2 square hectares. In addition, the leaves of plants absorb sound, which may somehow contribute to sound attenuation by plants and plant communities. Since the number of leaves of the one full-grown tree equals to 2 times 10 to the 5 leaves. However, this noise might be beneficial for some plants. Duh. Francis and al. Found that noise pollution in natural gas wells area indirectly increased artificial flower pollination by hummingbirds, but altered the community of animals that prey upon the dispersed. Okay, that is true. I wouldn't go and do this in wild environments. It is true that you could be affecting the animals and the way that they deal with the noises. This is the equivalent of what happens in a city environment. Okay, I get that. Let's see. This is all talking about the pressure levels. We're not going to get into that because we're not going to get into the details. We're almost at the end. So this is how you, here we go, the conclusion. Excuse me. The world population increase presents a challenge to scientists and researchers to investigate the possibilities for using new and green technologies to increase the production of food. Or maybe to just treat our plants a little nicer. You know, maybe we don't have to eat plants that have all kinds of like yucky chemicals in them to force them to grow in a certain way. Maybe we can just let them grow. It's just a thought. Using sound waves technology can enhance the plant immune system, thereby avoid many problems associated with the environmental pollution and the economic cost of chemical fertilizers and herbicides. The aim of this review was to present the effects of audible sound waves on some plants in different growth stages. The previous studies have shown that sound waves at different kinds of acoustics, sound pressure levels, and frequencies for a certain exposure time affect the plant growth. Results of previous studies revealed that sound wave stimulation increases the growth of callus and accelerates the anabolism of callus cells, and a frequency of 1 kilohertz, human speech, and sound pressure level of 100 decibels for 60 minutes once or twice a day as continuous sine waves for 9 to 12. Seriously, you don't have to do the continuous sound waves. You just have to have people talk to them. Just talk to kin. Talk with kin. 1 kilohertz for 60 minutes. Talk to your plants 60 minutes. Then you don't have the noise pollution. You're not affecting animals. Walk through the gardens talking to your plants, and you shall have this response. That's really the conclusion here, right? That's the true conclusion. Okay, sound wave enhance the division growth, blah, blah, blah. Further sound waves could influence the secondary structure of protein, not only in cells, but also not only in cell wall, but also in plasma lemma. However, the optional sound frequency stimulation will change according to the exposure time and period of application. Different plant species have various responses to sound stimulation at different growth stages. The optimal sound stimulation for seed germination of sound waves of SPL of 100 decibels and frequencies. Okay, wait, hold on. Let's see if they're going to talk about more, because we can get into the technical details by reading it. So the frequency of the external sound stimulation along with the plant spontaneous sound frequency are in line, and then the resonance occurs. Moreover, when the sound waves and energy reach the leaf, part of the sound energy vibrates the leaf, and the other part of the sound wave energy reflects and diffracts around the leaf, and that part of the sound wave energy affects on the insects around plants. Viewing of the sound simulation mechanism from the biologist platform and simulation cause leaf stomata to open so that the plant will be able to increase its uptake of spray. Well, not because of the spray fertilizer. How about just dew and things from the air? I'm trying to be very positive, especially in the morning. The sound stimulation is also very efficient at getting the herbicides into the plant. Mature weeds can be sprayed with a 50% less herbicide and biocide. Therefore, sound stimulation decreases the requirements for chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Yay! As well as decreasing the plant's disease and improving plant immune systems. Moreover, absorption efficiency of light energy markedly increased by sound waves, which has resulted in more electron transport between original quinine receptors and the recipient side of the PS2, more light energy used for photochemical reaction, and finally, less superfluous excitation energy. Sound waves stimulate the endogenous hormones. Thus, acoustic frequency technology promotes plant growth, increases production, and improves yield quality. So the future trend is that the results of previous studies show that different species of plants have various responses to sound wave stimulation in different growth stages. Thus, further research is needed. Yeah, we know that. Okay, this is all just saying the exact same thing. Improve and spread this technology to promote the plant production worldwide and integrate the multi-physical agricultural technologies such as electric, magnetic, optical, thermal, and nuclear, and emerge into a single practical technology. The mechanism of how sound affects the cell cycle and growth of plants needs further research and more scientific studies for unambiguous understanding. It sounds like the conclusion is pretty simple. Like, ditch the herbicides, ditch the pesticides, and use sound. And in my opinion, this is again my opinion only, the next stage, just talk to the plants. 1 kilohertz, which basically means 1,000 hertz, beautiful sound of your voice. Just talk to your plants. This is scientifically proving that if you talk to your plants will grow better. And I think that that's the perfect place to leave us here, right? Isn't that exactly what we want? We're looking for that. This is 2014, folks. Why the world didn't pick this up, like the media world, and like run with it, which is, hey, speaking to your plants on a regular basis improves their overall growth and improves their immune system. Just tell me why they haven't run with this, Arda. Talk with love. Exactly, Jill. Talk with love. That's what we need. So this was our 2 papers into sound wave stimulation. So on strawberry plants, as well as in all kinds of agricultural plants. These were studies done in China in 2010, 2014. Folks, that was 10 years ago. We've known this now for 10 years. What are we going to do about it? I'd love to hear about your own experiences with talking to your plants. Do you find that there's a difference when you talk to your plants? Does the overall growth change? Does your relationship with the plants? And more importantly, do you listen? Do you listen for the response that comes back? So not just loving words, but also a response to hear, what is it that the plants want? And how is it that the plants want to grow with you and work with you in the co-creation of this beautiful environment in which you live? As soon as I publish this, I'd love for you to hear. I want to hear all your ideas, and I want to hear all about your experiences with this. Until then, we'll see each other next week. I hope you enjoyed this paper. If you have specific areas that you want me to go into, again, this was a bit of a technical paper, but I think we got the really good gist out of it. I have more of those lined up and queued up. Now we're starting to get into some really good papers. So I am excited to continue on this journey with you in 2024. But if you run into a paper or hear about an article or something like that that you really want me to talk about, then just let me know, drop me a message, and I'll be happy to include it in my list. Until then, we will see each other next Friday for our next plant consciousness commentary. And until then, remember, resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance. This is me, Tigria Gardenia. I'm out. See you all. Bye.